Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another new episode of the Masters with Harshith podcast. This is the first episode of the MBA series that I really wanted to start on public demand. And we have with us Shubham. Hi, Shubham. Welcome to the episode.
Hey Harshith, thank you so much for inviting me and glad to be here.
Thank you, Shubham. So, Shubham is a current MBA student at the Harvard Business School, and he has done his undergrad from IIT Kharagpur. And the whole point of this episode is for all those of you who are looking to pursue a master's in the US, a really good MBA, in fact. So, let's get started without further ado, Shubham. So, Shubham, why don't you talk about what you did before you landed at Harvard? What was your background? What did you work as? What did you study at Kharagpur and things like that, maybe?
Sure, Harshith. So I was born and brought up in Kolkata, pursued my engineering from IIT Kharagpur. I'm a computer science engineer by training. But I think I found my passion in business during the undergrad journey, and I felt that that is something which I really wanted to do and like understand business better. And of course, technology would go hand in hand. So I knew that I understand technology, but to understand business, I joined consulting and worked at McKinsey and Company for about a year. But I was always passionate about investing. I think I started investing in public markets from my own money even during college days. And I think my roommate was also very passionate about public market investing. So was always keen on learning more about how to take more structured investment decisions, and hence
Hmm.
joined Westbridge Capital. It's a crossover fund. Basically, it means that it invests both in public and private markets, and I was looking at software and consumer investing there, and was there for about 3 years, and then decided to pursue my MBA. Grow the network, and of course, Harvard Business School. I think the case method itself is really appealing to just get different perspectives on the same case, and actually from different cultures. So I feel it brings a lot of different thoughts and kind of gives you more options to really think about. So I think that was the main motivation to do my MBA and of course build a global network. So here I am.
Thank you, Shubham. Thank you. So, Shubham, I want to understand your journey a little more, right? So, this is a question that even I've had, and a lot of people I've spoken to have. So, you did your undergrad in computer science from Kharagpur, which is probably the top three, top five in India. And
Hmm.
I see that you've done a research internship abroad, I think in France, in your undergrad.
Yeah.
And then you went on to Tower Research to do another internship during your pre-final year, after your pre-final year, I'm assuming. So, ideally someone who does that would continue moving into tech, right? So what was that one thing, or like what were those things? Was it your university environment, or was it something you did during your internship that kind of moved you towards the public market side you were talking about? What was it?
Yeah. I think a big motivation comes from my father itself because he has
Mm-hmm.
been an active investor himself. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that is number one. Just I think
Right.
growing up, I've seen him, do public market investing every day,
Mm.
day in, day out. So I
Right.
think that's one thing. The second, I would say that while I did pursue my, technical internships and I got both research experience, I published 2 papers. I also did technical internships like tower research.
Right.
But I felt like there was something missing from a learning perspective that after a couple
Mm-hmm.
of months or maybe 3 months, I kind of felt saturated in my, just learning and talking to senior people. I also realized that developers kind of, tap out after 2 or 3 years in one particular organization because then after that it's a lot of code based maintenance, which is also super critical. But in terms
Right.
of learning, I felt that unless you're always jumping ship, it's very difficult to
Mm.
have that compounded growth in the same organization.
Right.
But otherwise in business, I feel like that's not the case because you kind of have to constantly think about where does the business go from here? What is the
Mm-hmm.
next lever of growth? How do we improve our margins? How do we improve the metrics? What
Right.
are the consumer customer demands today versus 5 years back? So I think it's a very, dynamic environment, which I felt that I would love to be a part of and grow my career in that aspect. And given my computer science background and the technological shift, which now is very evident and everyone talks about it, I felt
Right.
that it is actually great to, have that background and then work in business so that you can have the best of both worlds. You kind of understand how technology can be used in, developing the ever changing demands and needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Shubham, like if we look at your applications, right? So you got Harvard Business School, of course. So what other schools did you apply for, and like what was the application process more like for you?
Yeah. So I applied to, I did not apply to a lot of schools because one, that I think the work pressure was quite high, working in investing. So I did not get enough time to like do multiple applications. But I
Mm-hmm.
did apply to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and Booth.
Mm-hmm.
And I got interview invites from all four of them. However, once the Harvard, result had come and I got an admit, I kind of pulled out of the other
Of course.
processes
Right.
because felt that that was my top school.
Right.
So just to not like block seats for others, I kind of felt that
Absolutely. Oh, very
better to.
noble. Absolutely. I think that's very important students should do, otherwise you get double allotted, and it's always an issue for
Correct.
those who do not get in. Absolutely. So Shivam, just to ask you, so when you were applying to Harvard, right, or like all the different schools, what was the
Mhm.
application process like? So I think you would have written the GRE or the GMAT, right? And like when did you write that? Given that you were already working and you mentioned that there was a lot of work stuff and all, so when did you do it? Did you do it during your college days, or did you do it post that, or like what was that?
Yeah, I actually did it during my work. So I started preparing for GMAT in October 2021, and
Hmm.
I finally gave my final I started giving GMAT from April onwards, but I only got my final score in August, about a month before the final application. So
Got
hence
it.
my recommendation for everyone would be to like get done with GMAT either in your final year of college or during the first 1 or 2 years of your work, because you kind of
Mm,
like are fresh from a college perspective, so you are in that test taking mode. Otherwise,
absolutely.
you kind of like lose that test taking mode, number one. Number two, with like as you more progress in the professional life, you kind of have more responsibilities. You kind of have a lot of work to do from a day to day on a day to day basis. So you kind of have less time to like really prepare for these exams. And I feel like all these exams require like a 1 month of consistent practice. That's all what it needs. It's not rocket science. It's not very difficult as compared to our entrance examinations, which I've already given in the past.
Right.
But it just requires dedicated time and effort, which anything requires, any exam requires. But it's very difficult to get it when you're at a decent junction of your professional life. So I think that's why I would recommend, all the juniors to like give it off in like either your final year of college or in the first year after graduation, so that you are in that mode of test taking. Like you can take out some time every day and just get done with it.
Absolutely, Shum. I think that's something I recommend as well, even for those who are not doing an MBA and just doing an MS. So
Yeah.
give your GRE in your like your final year or pre-final year. It's valid for 5 years, just like the GMAT as well, right? So you go like 2 years, 3 years of work experience later, you apply for your masters, you're still good to go.
Yeah.
So, Shimon, when you were shortlisting universities, everyone, like, the general consensus is Harvard is obviously the number one MBA. But like when you were applying, I'm sure you had certain field that you wanted to get into, right? I'm assuming
Mhm.
that's probably investment or something of that sort. So, what is that field, number one? Number two, when you evaluated your universities, what was the criteria you were looking for?
Yeah. So I would say definitely, I think I went in with the mindset of, like investing in general, but I would say that I'm keeping options open because I feel that I don't want to get tied to a particular thought, and like kind of also like discovering more at Harvard, talking to
Mm,
different people and like trying to understand what really excites me. In terms of like shortlisting which universities to go, I think my idea was that I was in a very good job. I was liking it. I did not really, feel that okay, like I definitely want an MBA. At least that was the thought process. The MBA would have been great if I could like get into the top four or top five schools, just to
right,
build that very strong network given the
right.
high quality of people which come in. So hence I prioritize applying to only like top five schools. And if I
Mm,
would not have gotten in, it would be absolutely fine. I would have probably continued my job. So that was a thought process that let me just apply to the top five schools where
right.
I know I can meet like uh, very high quality people from across the globe,
Absolutely.
and just prioritize that. So yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Shubham, when you were in your undergrad, right, did you at any point feel like or knew that you would do an MBA? Because I think after your third year, your pre-final year internship, you realize that probably you want to jump ship and move towards like investments and like finance side. So did you ever like know that? Did you have like an inkling or something that you wanted to do an MBA at that point when you were still in college?
Actually, no, I don't think I had a, like a forethought of doing an MBA at that
Hmm.
point in time. The the idea only came during my Westbridge days, when, like, maybe after a year or two at Westbridge, I kind of realized that all the senior professionals in investing have a MBA. And I think more than like just a financial knowledge, or that can still be learned, but what really differentiated them was the network, was
Absolutely.
like the people whom they knew in the circuit, right? Whether it be in India or outside. I think that really differentiated them from, like, how quickly they could, like, just understand different things, and like just one conversation with an expert in their own network can be like really powerful, and like help them, get on, like, get understand a different industry in 1 or 2 days. So I think that was something which, I kind of felt that that is the biggest value add an MBA does. And that's why I wanted to, like, then decided that yes, that post investing, I think doing an MBA would be great just for, long term benefits.
Absolutely. So the one thing I've heard from people as well is like the main thing you take away from the MBA more than your academics is your network. And that is the
Correct.
reason folks always want to get to the top schools because that's where you have the best people coming in. So,
Yeah.
just to add an anecdote, last week I was attending this talk at Columbia Business School by Mr. Amit Soni, who's like a partner at CVC Capital. So he was talking about how his time at Wharton and like all the network he's built over there, how even like 20, I think 15, 20 years later right now, they're still in touch, and how for any business decision you call up like any of them, and like they will always be more than ready to help you. So I can completely understand when you say that when you in the investment world as well, having friends, having connections is super important.
Yep.
Awesome. So Shubham, was there anything you think that your background helped you get into the Harvard Business School? Like, so obviously investment for sure would have like, that would have been like a direct correlation with what you were going to do post that. But anything else, like you think you're something you did in your undergrad, maybe did you like do some business competitions? Did you do some case competitions, something maybe? Because that's what a lot of people who go into consulting or something try to do as well, right? So was there any part of your application that you think you've done differently compared to your peers, which has helped you, gain and admit like Harvard?
I would say that, like, those things kind of help you build more, like, things which you do in your undergrad kind of help build your more acumen around business. So I did a lot
Hmm.
of case study or like case competitions during my undergrad. I think that really helped, just me, like, help me being more curious about businesses. That doesn't come in your application too much. Like, it's maybe
Mm,
like a small part of it that, hey, I did case studies during my undergrad, but that's not something which I'm not sure. Again, like, it's all a black box, to be honest. So
of
I don't know
course.
what really, what the admission committee really looks at. But I would say that that definitely, helps you kind of like have that, build that curiosity over time. And I think what really helped me was to just show that curiosity in different ways, whether it be in consulting, whether it be during my investment journey. I think that was the more differentiating factor. Again, like, I would not say it was a big differentiating factor, because there are a lot of people who come with the same background, right?
Mm,
And I, like, sometimes, like, you also have to have a very strong personal motivation on, like, why do you want to join a business school. So I think
right.
more than the profile, the essays really matter, and what you are communicating in your story really matters. For me, it was how technology has played a strong role in my growth journey. I think that really probably, like, differentiated me from other investment professionals who might have, like, more focus on their investing journey or like something or the other. But I think the way you communicate your story, that really matters.
Awesome. So I think, Shubham, that's a great segue for the next question I was going to ask. So what was the application process like for Harvard? Like how many essays did you have? Was it a video interview? Was it a live interview? What was the process like?
So first step is, of course, giving your GMAT or GRE and clearing that off. And I would say that for Indian candidates, probably a 730 score in GMAT is something which you should aim for, at
Hmm.
least 730. Coming to the next step, it's just one essay in Harvard. So it's more like, it's a very open-ended essay where they kind of like ask you that, hey, what do you want to tell us more about, apart from the application?
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
so it's a very, very open-ended question. So you can literally write anything. within
Hmm.
900 words. And the other part is, of course, resume and the application. The application takes a lot of like other details about your work experience, about your undergrad experience, and again, very short excerpts which you have to like put in. So I would say like
Hmm.
it does not take a lot of time. It's probably like just one day of work, but you have to be like
Okay.
thoughtful about how you write your application. But building your resume and building your essay are the two main criterias, right? And
Right.
third is probably the SOPs, sorry, the reference letters from your
Right.
employer. So I think those recommendation letters also really matter. It should like communicate like different aspects of of your personality, which may
Hmm.
not be there in the essay, which may not be there completely in the resume. Just get a third person's perspective on like that this person is someone who can add value to the class, right? So I
Right.
think every MBA school, especially at least in the US, I feel is is thinking about how can that person add value to the class discussions, and can the peers learn a different thing from that person, right? So I think
Right.
that education comes from like different ways. So one is
Hmm.
the essay, one is the reference letters, and lastly is a resume. So I think
Hmm.
working on those really matter.
Right. So, Shubham, your reference letters, right? How many did you need them, and like whom did you get them from? Like, did you also have to go back to? Did you need an academic LOR? I'm assuming probably MBA does not. How does that work?
I do not need an academic LOR, but
Right.
I think it depends on like when you're applying to MBA.
Hmm.
I would, but again, like I would say that mostly you need at least 3 years of work experience to do an MBA, if not four. The
Hmm.
average, the median is probably five. So
Right.
people are taking some time to like get to MBA, and like because I think that also gives them, because like talking from a personal perspective, the more work experience you have, you kind of like can have more meaningful discussions with your peers, contribute to class better. So I think that really matters. So
Hmm.
I took my reference letters from a partner at McKinsey and a partner at Westbridge Capital, both my employers, and trying to get like different perspectives. Given I wanted to like show work experiences both in McKinsey as well as Westbridge.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, a total of two reference letters. Am I correct?
Yes, you just need two reference letters, and that's what every business school, like every business school,
Okay.
just needs two. So yeah.
Interesting. Got it. Got it. So, Shubham, what was the timeline like? So, I've heard that MBA schools have rounds of admissions, right? So, what was that like? And like, when do you get the interview dates? And like, how many video and how many interviews do you have? And like, how long does the whole process take?
So there are there are usually two rounds. Some
Mm-hmm.
schools also have round three,
Mm-hmm.
and now also some schools have rolling rounds versus some schools
Okay.
have like fixed dates. So for example,
Okay.
Columbia also has a rolling admit where like if
Okay.
you apply before a certain date, you kind of like get an interview call within, let's say, 2 weeks. You
Mm-hmm.
do the interview and you get a decision also within another 2 weeks. So
Mm-hmm.
within a month you can like get done with it. But talking more about Harvard, at least in Harvard, what was this process was that September first week was the deadline for the essays.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then after that, sometime mid October, you kind of like get to know whether you got an interview call or not. Your interview
Okay.
happens from late October to first 2 weeks of November, around that time
Mm-hmm.
frame.
Mm-hmm.
And December first week is when you get the final final decision of whether you got the admit or not. So
Got it.
September to December is round one. Round
Mm-hmm.
two starts in January. So the deadline is of submission of essays is January first week, and
Mm-hmm.
application. Um, the decision comes around end of Jan, and by the end of February, I think you get to know whether you're getting an admit or not. So usually it's like a 2 to 3 month process for
Right.
each round. The round
Mm-hmm.
one is slightly longer, maybe round two is slightly smaller, because
Mm-hmm.
round one you kind of like know who all are getting into the class, and by
Right.
round two the admission committee also knows what are the gaps they want to fill. So it's just slightly
Mm.
faster.
Got it. So, I mean, by the sound of it, I think, Shubham, ideally everyone should be applying for the round one itself, right? Is there like which round did you apply for? And like is there like a certain kind of like certain professions or like certain kinds of people who you would recommend to apply for round two? Because I was having this conversation with another student at UC Davis, and the analogy we came up with is like they're trying to fit a puzzle. So like through the rounds, you put a couple of pieces, and what you want to do is fill the puzzle completely. So you want to find people who are different and who will fit in those gaps. So what is
Correct.
your takeaway from that? Like, how is that?
I would say, based on my conversations and my experience, I think round one, round two, you kind of have an equal chance, at least in Harvard,
Hmm.
because both like in Harvard, you kind of like, like only 50% of the class or 55% maybe is filled in round one. The rest of
Okay,
it is filled in round two. So, like, I think in my personal experience from talking to friends as well as, just, experiencing the process, you kind of have an equal opportunity. So I
got it.
would say apply when you feel comfortable applying.
Mm,
It should not be round one, round two. Depends a lot on like do you have a good GMAT score already or not. Depends on
got
like
it.
whether you feel that your story is strong enough or not, or do you want to like add something more to it. I think all of these things matter. Also depends on like your work timelines. Have you been able to give enough time to the
Mm,
application? So I think depends a lot on that. So I did round one because I kind of prioritized that and like worked according to that timelines. But sometimes, some people get busy with work or can get busy with other activities in their personal life, all of those things can happen. So I would say give it your best shot, right? So even if that means doing round two, you kind of have an equal opportunity. So I don't think there's a big advantage or disadvantage of doing round one or round two.
got it. That's a very interesting take because I was not aware of that. I always assumed earlier the better, but here you're saying it was a different opinion. Thank you. So, Shubham, what was the interview experience like? So, is it like a generic, is it a technical MBA kind of interview where you're given a case or you're not given a situation or something like that? Or is it just an interview where they try to get to know you, your interests and your background and your authenticity and things like that?
I think the idea is to like understand authenticity as well as like understand like thought processes. So I think
Hmm.
for Harvard Business School, the interview is very very focused on your resume. So they kind of like understand the bits and nuances of every part of your resume, every part of your experience, and that's what matters
Hmm.
in this context. So I think just understanding your industry really well, your investments, your work really well, and communicating that in a concise manner. I think that's the biggest thing which I think Harvard looks for. So just being thorough with your experiences as well as and when I say experiences, not just what did you do, but what did
Hmm.
you learn out of it, right?
Right.
What was the eventual outcome, right? So I think that was the main thing which I think I focused on, and I think everyone should focus on who is interviewing with Harvard.
Got it. So, typically, are these interviews taken by present students, alums, or is it taken by like the admission committee or professors, or what is it usually like?
For Harvard Business School, is the admission committee who takes
Got
the
it.
interview.
Got it. Got it. So, Shubham, what is the course structure at Harvard Business School? Like, is it 2 years? And do you have specializations and things like that? How many courses can you pick? Are there like concentrations or like track electives or like what is the structure like?
So Harvard Business School is quite unique in that sense that usually other business schools have more of an elective structure,
Hmm.
but Harvard Business School it's a 2-year program. First year is a required curriculum. So basically, the courses are fixed. So you don't get to choose which course you want to take. It's
Hmm.
more or less fixed. However, in the second year, you kind of have a credit system where you kind of bid your credits and you kind of like choose the courses which you want, and that is where you can like specialize or like take certain courses which you want to take. So
Hmm.
Harvard MBA does not have a specialization. So like
Got
other
it.
MBAs, like like other business schools either are specialized in finance or specialized in
Right.
entrepreneurship or something or the other. But
Correct.
Harvard is a general MBA, so you don't get like, oh, MBA in finance, MBA in entrepreneurship.
Makes
That's
sense.
not the idea. It's just
Right.
a MBA, and you can, of course, take different courses in your second year to like build different skill sets.
Absolutely. So, Shubham, what is the class like for you at Harvard? Like, how many students do you have? You were mentioning that 4 to 5 years is ideally the average work experience. That's what all of us have heard as well. So, what is
Mhm.
your experience like being at Harvard? What kind of backgrounds are people coming from? Are like majority of the Indians or majority students in general from like the investment background? Do you have a lot of product people as well? Do you have consulting people as well? What is the mix like?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know all the stats, but I'll tell you that
Sure.
there are about 940 people in one class, and we are
Right.
divided in 10 sections.
Hmm.
So roughly about 94 people in every section.
Okay.
And what is very interesting is that majority of the people this time are from engineering backgrounds. And when I say
Interesting.
majority, it's probably like 35%, 40%, something around that.
Got it.
Again, like this not it's not a heavy majority, but a large
A
portion
good
of
number,
people
good chunk. Right.
engineering, right? But it's from very diverse backgrounds, right? And I don't have a particular stat to share,
For
but I
sure.
think
No
that
problems.
people from product, from consulting, from investing backgrounds, from nonprofits.
Hmm.
So a very, very mixed bag. And that's why I think MBA kind of helps you build different perspectives.
Absolutely. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, after going to attending like a semester at Harvard, so what have you gotten to know that you wish you knew before entering Harvard? Like, maybe a course you could have like structured differently, or like some club on campus you would have probably joined, or like anything that you've really come across.
Yeah, I think it's good that you ask. I don't think I was not aware of, what are the different clubs, etc. But I think one thing which I was probably not aware is that how intense can it get very, very early on. And like
Hmm.
being intentional about what you commit to kind of, is very, very important. So you kind of have to like know that, okay, like this is something which I want to spend my time on, and this is something which is if I get time, then I'll then spend time on, right?
Hmm.
So in your like, I think the other thing which I would say is that like the networking component, the social component of any MBA is very, very important, but also very, very exhausting. So being just mentally prepared about meeting 940 different people
Right.
is definitely like a
It's
little
taxing. Thinking about it is taxing itself.
correct, like and again, it's not physically possible to meet all of them, right?
Correct.
You can, but so you hence kind of prioritize your section because that's the group of people whom you are spending every day in class with, debating with, discussing
Right.
different topics with. So
Right.
I think that's where I think like Harvard Business School MBA shines, where you kind of make very, very close knit bonds with your 94 students whom you are spending every day, and like try to like build very strong connections there.
Makes sense. So, Shubham, what kind of course are you taking this semester, and what were they like last semester? And like, how long are each class? Like, how long is each class, and like, how are things like?
So each class is about 80 minutes. Last semester we focused on basics of finance, marketing. We focused on operations. We also had a very popular course called leadership, where you kind of like go through different leadership scenarios and tough decisions which CEOs or executives had to make. And I
Hmm.
think those are the like great foundational courses to really build on. We also had a new course called data science for managers, so as to like build some technology acumen for future business leaders. This semester we are focusing again more on advanced finance. We are focusing on strategy. We are focusing on entrepreneurial management as well. On like because again, even in a large conglomerate, every business unit is kind of run by an entrepreneur. So just understanding that aspect as
Makes
well
sense.
as helping people start up and like start their own businesses. Then there are also there's also focus on what else? Sorry, there's also focus on just building strategy and like how to like go about making those topics and like try to build on top of it. So focus is there as well, and also finally on like corporate accountability on like especially when you are in leadership positions,
Right.
you kind of are responsible for a lot of your decisions, especially in regulated environments. So how to like be conscious about that and like be aware of what are your fiduciary duties. All of those are also important.
Absolutely. So, Shubham, what is your biggest takeaway so far from Harvard? If there was one takeaway that you've had over the last semester and so far, what is the one thing that you love about Harvard?
I think what I love about Harvard is just how open it is, like to just interact with anyone. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
anyone, it also includes teachers and professors here. I think that is the biggest takeaway for me, is that you can actually just go up to them, and they are also very very excited to know more about you, and are very very looking and look forward to like actually helping you, and just building your career, and how invested everyone is in like helping you out. I think that is something which has been a great experience. In terms of like what is my biggest takeaway is also, I would probably repeat, is that you have to be very intentional with your time, because there are
Mm.
100 different things to do at a business school, and and you kind of want to do everything, but it's very
You
difficult to like
correct.
do everything. Maybe some people are able to do it, but majority of the people have to prioritize, right? And I think the earlier
Absolutely.
you just be aware of what you want to prioritize, it becomes easier. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Shubham, I just want to ask this from like an Indian perspective, right? So, in your batch, the Indians who are attending Harvard, what is their typical background like? So, are they? So, when I was like, for example, when I was looking up for like people on LinkedIn, one trend I noticed is a lot of them are from IITs, and a lot of them have done investment banking or consulting. So, one of those
Mhm.
two. So, is that a normal trend? Or do you also see a lot of people from impact consulting, or maybe from product management, or from marketing also from India, or like engineer? Like what is the usual thing like?
I would say that they try to like make a mixed bag.
Mm,
It's not really like heavily focused on one particular aspect. So
mhm,
they kind of make a mixed bag. But I would definitely say that uh, a large majority, or like a bigger proportion, are engineers
mm,
from India.
mm.
And definitely, among engineering colleges, IITs are considered to be the biggest
Correct.
engineering colleges from just from a brand perspective, as well as
Mm,
the rigor which people have gone through. So that
right.
definitely is something which is prioritized. So I think that is one. But there are people from commerce colleges. There are people from
Mm,
different arts background as well, from social impact background. So all of those, it's kind of a mixed bag, I would say.
right.
And but definitely, I think the other profession, which is kind of again a very large majority, is consulting. People who
Mm,
have had like consulting experience, that also like is definitely favored, because I feel that it just is a very structured thinking which people come from who have done consulting before. They kind of have had different industry experiences, what they can talk about. So I think just maybe that is another reason. But again, having said that, I would caveat is that it's changing year by year, and every year is a
absolutely.
different mix. So it's very
Correct.
difficult to generalize. From
Right.
my cohort perspective, I would say there's a decent large majority who have come from consulting backgrounds.
Got it. So, Shubham, what is the push towards entrepreneurship at Harvard like? So, I've heard a couple of MBAs are like more geared towards, they encourage you to be entrepreneurial right in college and start a venture right there, or they encourage people who have started and who failed to come again, like, learn stuff. So, what is the culture like at Harvard? And if you had to like pick one particular field that Harvard usually excels at, which one would that be?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you the first answer. I think Harvard is very, very geared towards, building the next set of entrepreneurs. So we have a Rockefeller Center where you kind of like, can build ideas, and they also provide you fellowships
Mm,
for pursuing your idea, as well as there's an innovation lab, which is popularly called iLab in Harvard Business School, where they also like help you with like very basic credits, like for example you can build a personal website using those credits. You can use
mm,
AWS if you're building a technology led business, and you can explore your ideas. So I think it's a very very strong push from Harvard, and a great environment for future entrepreneurs to be here. So I would say that on your second question, there's no real one particular field where I think Harvard MBAs are doing well. I think it's
mm,
varied, and I think there are stellar examples across every different field where Harvard
absolutely.
MBAs are there. So I
Correct.
would not say that there's just one particular field where Harvard MBAs excel.
Got it. Got it. So, Shubham, I just want to, go back to your undergrad for like a second and just ask you this one thing. So, you mentioned that you did, like, you had two research papers published, right? So while applying for MBA, did you mention that, and do you think that had any weightage, or do you think that only your experience in investment and like your consulting experience or your experience after college mattered for this process?
I'm not sure if it how much weight did it have. I did mention it in my resume,
Hmm.
but definitely. So there definitely you want to like highlight more of your recent experiences rather than
Of course.
something which you have done like 5 years back, right? So in your
Right.
process and your application, you want to like highlight more of your last 3 to 4 years versus
Hmm.
something which is probably like 6 years ago, right? Because
Correct.
it's also like kind of like difficult to like maintain an expertise unless you are in that field. Like had I
Hmm.
stayed in a technical field and like built more papers out of that those two research papers, then I could have like talked more about it. But yeah, so I would say that it was not a very big part of the whole process, but
Right.
definitely something which I mentioned, and or maybe and also like took motivation in my essay to like really say that, hey, like this is why I got interested in technology and like how I did technology investing at Westbridge.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Shubham. So, Shubham, like, to come into towards the last segment of the episode, right? So, is there anything particular that you'd want to share with Harvard aspirants, especially? Like any tip that you thought that really helped you or something like that? Or something we did not discuss about so far?
I would say that, like I think we have discussed most of it, but I think one thing which I think any MBA applicant should be aware is that it's not one particular profile which makes the cut.
Hmm.
It's various different profiles. But I think the biggest differentiating factor is that how much passion can you show about that particular profile, right? About that
Right.
particular journey which you have
Segment or
had.
stuff. Absolutely.
So so how you communicate your story, that really matters. And you have to like kind of understand that why have you taken this journey? There's always, a certain subconscious, effort which you're always doing and pursuing, which has motivated to, do from like move from career one to career two to
Hmm.
maybe a career three. And I think just understanding that aspect and and showcasing that is just most important thing.
Got it. Got it. So, Shum, how do you see and you're leveraging the Harvard brand name, the Harvard MBA school as you go into your future career, right? So, is this something you see that rock solid that this is where Harvard will come into like help, or like is it just a general thing that you're going
It's a tough question, Harshit.
with?
I have no idea how to like make the most out of it. But I
Right.
think in my head, I think what Harvard is provides again comes back to the network and the alumni
Right.
base. And
Mm.
Harvard alumni are everywhere doing various great things. So I feel that just having that network and having that support that
Right.
I can reach out to an Howard alumni, and he or she will definitely, at least have a conversation with me and try to help me out. As I said that every Howard MBA is really geared towards helping each other out. So I think that
Right.
is the biggest takeaway from me, and that is something which I am looking forward to leverage on. That how can I make great connections and like just work with amazing people. But again, it's a TBD. I will keep you posted.
Absolutely. Done, for sure, for sure. So, Shubham, one of the most critical questions that everyone has when applying for an MBA in the US: how much does your program cost? How are you funding it? What are the scholarship opportunities like? It's a broad question, so yeah.
Yeah. So Harvard MBA is a need-based scholarship. So you
Hmm.
kind of like have to show if like like how a financial position is, and you based on that they kind of like take a call on whether you get how much scholarship you get. It can range from 0% to 100%. It can be any number in between,
Hmm.
depending on how much savings you have, what has been your past earnings, all of those, right?
Right.
But overall the program costs about 200K in USD for the 2 years. That's a
Mm.
rough estimate. It can now depends a lot on like because MBA students are very notoriously known for like traveling a lot, and like
Correct.
so it depends on like how much you travel and how much you spend. So I think it can
Right.
range from maybe 190K to probably 220 to 30K. So it depends on
Got
like
it.
how much you want to like travel and like explore different parts.
Got it. So does this include the living expenses as well, Shubham, or what is that like?
Yes, it includes tuition, living expenses,
A
rent.
whole. Got it.
Yeah, as a whole, I would say that maybe the upper limit is 250, 270K.
Okay.
The lower limit is probably 180K. So
Got it.
ranging somewhere between that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool. So Shubham, I just wanted to clarify one thing. So when you said it's a need-based thing, right? So once someone receives an admit, can they, does that process begin post that, or do you declare that while filling the application? And yeah, I think yeah.
For Harvard, it is post you get an admit when you kind
Mhm.
of like submit your details, and based on that, they give you a need-based scholarship.
Got it. So is it like almost is it almost always guaranteed that someone who needs the aid will get the aid for sure, or how does it work?
It's a very, very fair and transparent system. I feel that
Okay.
if I think it's definitely it's benchmarked globally. So
Hmm.
depending on how has your earnings been and how much your savings are, and whether you have a lot of liabilities, like for example, a lot of people have been supporting their families for a long time. So
Right.
based on that, it's a very, very fair process, and there are different factors which are considered. But at least in my opinion, I think everyone gets what they actually like need, and like kind of like I so overall I would say that at the end everyone starts at the same base level based on
Hmm.
how much they have saved and how much they have earned.
Got it. Got it. So, Shubham, one of the last question I wanted to ask you is when you were applying for an MBA in the US, now a lot of people, with the India growth story really booming and things like that. So, did you ever consider doing an MBA probably at ISB or like somewhere in Singapore or something so that you can stick around India? Or like, what are your plans like? And like, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think I did think about it whether I should do an India MBA or not, but I felt that India MBA is a great network to probably like build on a very, very deeper connection in India. But having spent a lot of time in venture capital in India, I think I had a decent good network in India, and hence I wanted to
Hmm.
maybe build a more global network and a global community, and hence wanted to pursue somewhere where I can have that opportunity. And just to give more context, like in Harvard MBA, 40% are internationals and 60% are Americans. So it's a very,
Got
very,
it.
a large group of international group. So you kind of
Hmm.
like understand very, very different perspectives from different parts, right? It covers like Europe, Africa, Asia,
Got it.
Australia, every part, right? So
Right.
you kind of have a very, very good perspective.
Right. I think that makes sense. That makes sense, Shubham. I think that's all I had to ask. It's been a very, very informative session, even for me, because I come from an MS background. I do not know a lot about MBA, but I think now I have a good sense of what an MBA is like. So thank you so much for your time, Shubham. This was a fantastic learning experience, even for me.
No, thank you, Harshit, for having me, and I hope I can be helpful for others as well. But it was great discussing, and like just sharing my opinions. Great,
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shubham. Thank you, everyone
thank you.
who's watched this episode. So this was one fantastic episode about the Harvard MBA, and I'll also be covering the other MBA schools in the coming episodes. So please do subscribe and follow for more details and more information.